All right, okay, so let us talk about the next one for the 52 short stories. Now, for a while now, we were just talking about writing, just any type of writing, whether it's the short story, the play, or just any type of thing that you want to write. But today, actually, I want us to start talking about pre-writing a novel, since I'm assuming that is the end goal for everybody. So let's talk about the elements of a novel or the elements of pre-writing a novel. So let's talk about backstory. So backstory are the stories that, or is the stories that happened to your character before the story started. So, um, like you think about their childhood, their family, their school, their work, whatever, like life, whatever it is that they used to live before. So it's not actually the story, but just how they were before. Okay? So with backstory, it's well think about it this way, okay? And this is why I use the example of, strangers and friends. So in the beginning of the novel, the reader does not know who the character is. The character is a stranger, then later on becomes a friend, then becomes a best friend. So timing is everything. People will never want to know about your character's whole story on the first day. It's better to leave some mystery. So it is really actually a common mistake for most people to go ahead and put everything in the beginning of the story about all of the um, ideas and problems of your character. But honestly, it's not a good idea to do that at the beginning of your story. I don't know if this experience ever happened to you, but a long time ago, I remember that I met someone who decided that they wanted to tell me their life story, and they actually started from the day they were born and they continued talking about every single thing. Now, it's kind of a weird first conversation to have with somebody to start at the beginning of their birth. So, um, yeah, it's not really recommended with backstory. So, um, like I said, it's one of the mistakes that people make when they're writing. It's very weird. It's uncomfortable for the reader. It's uncomfortable in real life when somebody does that to you. So, backstory, it's something, it's like salt. So, it's something that should be sprinkled throughout the story, not necessarily something that all comes all at once. So, it's not that the character or not that the reader doesn't want to get to know your character. They do. That's why they picked up the book. They want to get to know your character, but they just don't want all that information all at once because it's just it makes way more sense and it makes the story much more interesting when you sprinkle it here and there throughout the story. But when you tell everything at the beginning, you just ruin it's like you ruin the story. It's like you ruin the food because you added too much salt. Okay? So and now the other problem with starting backstory at the beginning is you're actually not starting your novel with the story. A story should start at the beginning. Okay? So like that person who was telling me how all of their problems or all of their situations started the day that they were born, it actually wasn't true. They were just trying to tell me about a current situation, a current problem that they had, and they were trying to relate it to all of the other bad luck things that happened to them. Um, that's a waste of time. It's better just to start the story at the beginning. Just say, hey, this is where my story began, not all the other stuff that came before it. Okay? So, and exactly what does that mean? What's the beginning of the story? So, the beginning of the story starts near the time of the big story question. So, the big story question is the mystery that must be solved in the story. So, this person who wanted to really ask me a question about their current problem should have probably started somewhere near the current problem in this current question, not starting from, whatever 16 years before. Okay? So every novel is a puzzle. And the reason why you want to keep reading is because you want to know the story question. It's like putting together a puzzle. Not sure if everyone here has ever put together a puzzle. Hopefully you have. If you haven't, you may want to try it one day. But it's basically just a big picture that has all these pieces, but you don't know what the picture is until you get to the end. So you have to put together the pieces and hopefully they fit. And then towards the end, that's when you're like, oh, okay, this puzzle, I see it. It's a picture, it's a map of the world. Okay? So you just put together piece after piece until it's a complete picture. And there's so many small pieces that show only one big picture. So before you write a novel, you must decide what is that story question that the character must solve. Like what is the problem? Okay? So okay, so basically that's what we're going to talk about for pre-writing. So think about that until next week. For now, let's talk about another story or short story type. So the short story type we're going to talk about is called running away. So running away, for example, is just pretty simple when a character is running away from punishment. The punishment can be just, unjust, or injustice. So I'm sure everybody's, whatever, experienced one time or another, especially when you're children, escaping punishment from your parents or something. So, but that is what the story is about. It's about running away. Okay? So, when it comes to this story, the conflict usually is going to be a couple things. It could be that the character or fugitive was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Maybe they didn't speak out, or they tried to speak out against injustice and they got punished. Maybe it was something that was correct. Perhaps they really did do something wrong. And remember that punishment doesn't necessarily have to be death or beating or anything. It could just be about the loss of anything that's important to the character. So even at school, your teacher can punish you by saying, okay, you can't go out for recess, or you're going to get an F in the class or the test because you did something wrong. So punishment could be about the loss of anything that's important to your character, whatever that is, even losing a friendship or trust from somebody. So what is it that was important? Anything that was important. That is punishment in a story, or punishment in general. Okay. So when it comes to running away, you have a couple things that happen. So for example, the goal, a crime happened or the character made a mistake. So now they need to run away. So conflict, someone actually sees what they did, the disaster, the punisher wants to punish them, the reaction, the character decides to run away, and dilemma, the character gets another problem that makes them want to give up and go back, and decision, the character stops running and faces their fear. Or do they escape? So, for example, two Somali boys in Toronto are trying to get home safely. The bus driver kicks them off the bus in a Jamaican gang neighborhood. Conflict, the gang sees them. Disaster, the gang chases them. They run away. Dilemma, the gang keeps chasing them. So, should they keep on running? Should they stay? They're not, able to both of them run. So maybe one is able to run, but the other one is getting sick and they can't breathe. So what should they do? So decision, they decide, you know what, we're going to stop running and we're going to fight and we're going to defend ourselves. Even if it's going to be a difficult fight, but we'll try. Okay, so go ahead and think about your outline for your 6 steps that happen in 6 minutes to 1 hour to 6 hours. Write 100 to 200 words for each step of your short story. And of course, don't forget when you're thinking about things like, the story question, as I was saying earlier, for your pre-writing, start thinking about exactly what kind of book that you want to write about and what kind of story question that you want to ask that or the character needs to solve. Okay? So write a short story every week. It's not possible to write 52 bad short stories in a row.